Hey folks, it's Mayor Victoria Gearity coming to you with a brief update on this Thursday evening. I was just writing down a few thoughts for a local newspaper article that's coming out talking about the impact of the coronavirus. And so I thought I'd share sort of my closing thoughts from that, which is something we have referred to many times and you certainly see on display every day in Ossining. And that is that crisis really can bring out the best in so many people, in most people. And we see that with such a tremendous spirit of generosity that is on display in our community all day long, with all of the people who donate their time, their money, their organizational skills for making sure that we have food for everyone in our community, that no one is going hungry right now, for people who are sewing masks and teaching other people to sew masks, for every person who decides that they're going to spend their hard-earned money or their precious savings right now on being able to have a meal at a local restaurant to help keep that restaurant afloat. They're expressing their generosity and commitment to the community as well. And that generosity is also demonstrated every time we go out and we practice social distancing and we wash our hands and we wear a mask and we stay home whenever possible. Those are all examples of how we express our generosity for our community and for our neighbors. That said, this experience has felt very differently for people depending on where you are in the economic spectrum. It's not difficult to recognize that there's a big difference for a family who lives in a small apartment where there are a number of people sharing a small space where they don't have any of their own outdoor space versus a family that may have 3,000 square feet of living space and an acre of land. Obviously, the difficulty, the challenge for a family in one situation versus another is very different. And the level of exposure of people who are essential workers and need to take public transit to get to their work. They are obviously more exposed to the virus and therefore more likely to be infected. People who live in apartment buildings where there are communal spaces, and there are a lot of people who touch the door handle and the elevator buttons and go up and down the staircases. So your economic status and the density where you live are very real and tangible factors in whether or not you are going to contract the virus or be exposed to the virus. And the depth of inequality that is felt every day in every aspect of our lives is felt again profoundly in this healthcare crisis. And on the financial side of that, people who earn a lower income are less likely to be able to now be working remotely and be able to maintain an income. They're also less likely to be able to collect unemployment insurance. So as with every segment of our lives, every sector of our lives, we recognize the impact of inequality, of the institutional racism that infects so much of our society all the time and is having an even more profound effect on how the people of Ossining and the country and the world are experiencing this virus. And so it is with that in mind that I ask us to take a moment each day to celebrate the generosity of spirit that we see among all people at all income levels, who are taking very seriously what they can do with their own behavior, with their generosity of spirit and time and resources to help alleviate some of the stress and difficulty of this time. So thank you to everyone. It's really inspiring to live in this amazing community where we see that generosity of spirit on display every day. I did also want to just comment on a couple of things that I've seen on social media recently. Local restaurants. There are so many people who are doing a great job at wanting to support local restaurants and getting delivery. When at all possible, if the restaurant you want to order from has their own website, or if you call and order, do that rather than using one of the services, the DoorDash, the Grubhubs. And while those services have proven to be tremendously valuable and important when that is the only way that a restaurant might be able to provide delivery, the reality is the restaurant itself, you have to pay a fee for that service. The restaurant itself also has to pay that service a fee. So that tremendously cuts down on the profitability. So There are a number of restaurants that you can still order from for curbside pickup or delivery to your home. I just encourage you whenever possible to do that directly with the local business, because I know part of what's motivating you is you want to help them. So maximize every dollar that you spend with them by trying to give it to them directly without using one of the middleman services. And to help you with that, there is a list that has been created in partnership with our friends in the town who have done a lot of the legwork in putting together a list of local restaurants and local businesses where you can, that are still open in some way, shape, or form. And so I encourage you, the supervisor put it in her message last week. We probably put it in the village message that came out today. I haven't checked. And I know some of us have been circulating it on social media. So check that out. And the list is a week old now. And I don't think China Ossining is on there yet. I know that they're doing some curbside pickups. So the list will be ever evolving. And please do contact the village or the town. I believe the information is on there who you can contact to make sure that if your favorite business or your business isn't yet on the list, that it can be there, because there is such a desire in Ossining for us to help our local businesses to still be here when this is all over and we get to see each other and sit down next to each other for a meal. I'll just quickly mention a couple of the big things. Big picture for New York State and the country is we have a primary election coming up for anybody who's a registered Democrat in New York State. You will soon be receiving an application in the mail for your absentee ballot. The primary will be on June 23rd. And you may be aware there was something in the news that the Board of Elections had decided that we wouldn't do the presidential primary in New York State. And then there was a lawsuit and there was a higher court that said, oh, yes, you will. Or a court came down and said, yes, you will. So we will be having the presidential primary. But the thing is, for us in Ossining, we were going to have a primary anyway, because we have a few contested races on the Democratic line this year. Nita Lowey, of course, is retiring. There's a long list of people who are running for her seat. David Carlucci is one of the people running for Nita Lowey's seat. So his seat in the New York State Senate is up, and there's competition for that seat. And for our town justice is the other contested race. So there's a lot to learn about candidates. I won't get into that today, but just be aware when you should be getting something in the mail if you're a registered Democrat in Ossining, and send that back. Then you'll get your ballot in the mail and you'll actually be able to vote by mail. Most of us have not voted by absentee ballot in the past. There used to be a lot of restrictions of who was allowed to vote by absentee ballot, and those have all been lifted to encourage people to vote by mail this time around, so that you can stay home and not risk infection for yourself or for others. And the last thing I'll mention is last night we had a nearly 2-hour discussion about our 2020 budget, never mind the 2021 budget that we'll be voting on at the end of the year, but our current budget year, what modifications we can make to that, what big ticket items. Oh, thank you. I was also reminded there's also a Westchester DA race. That's right. There is another primary. So there's 4 primaries that we need to be thinking of if you're a registered Democrat in Ossining. The current DA is Scarpino, and he's being challenged by Mimi Roca. So that's another important race for you to learn about the candidates. And, hopefully you're able to think about something other than just the health of your family and your own financial stability. You might be able to find a little time between now and June 23rd to take a look at the candidates and decide who you're going to support. But you don't have to know who you're going to support yet just to get your ballot. So go ahead and fill out that absentee ballot form when that arrives. And I encourage folks, if you're interested in what's going on in the local budget, we did have a lengthy conversation last night at the village board meeting. It was right at the beginning of the meeting. It is lengthy, but it's very interesting for anybody who really loves municipal government and budgets and finance. And I suppose that's a pretty small group of people. I'm one of them, at least now I am while I'm in the decision-making role. But I'll just tell you, big picture, what has been motivating a lot of my recommendations and requests of how we handle these things is to keep in mind, have one of our priorities being to preserve our fund balance. Ossining Village has a strong fund balance, much stronger than most municipalities do. That's part of the reason why I have advocated for and succeeded in 4 years of a 0% tax rate increase for village taxes. And even with the 0% tax rate increase, we have been able to maintain a healthy fund balance. And so the value of having that healthy fund balance is we'll be able to draw from it at times when we would rather not raise your taxes. we'd always rather not raise your taxes. But right now, we're going to see in this year's coming budget, but we're having a major withdrawal or retraction of the contraction of the economy, and we're going to feel that in a loss of revenue, particularly in the sales tax that is a good portion of our revenue. But our biggest portion of our revenue is property taxes, and the full impact on the assessment value of our property taxes probably won't be felt for a couple of years. So that's why this year we are going to be. I'm advocating for us to hold on to as much of our fund balance as possible for when I'm not even on the board anymore. I'll just be a regular taxpayer complaining about local government or celebrating local government, whatever I'm feeling on that given day, right? But so there are a couple of ways to do that. Just don't do the project you're going to do. Don't pay for it directly out of the fund balance. Borrow for more things than we typically would, because right now interest rates are incredibly low and we don't know what we're going to need that fund balance for in a couple of years. There's so much that's unpredictable right now, but we do know we can get a low interest rate on borrowing more now than we typically have been. We like to usually not borrow money and draw on the fund balance. This year, we're holding on to the fund balance a little more closely because there's so much unknown in what our anticipated revenue is not going to be what we had anticipated. So those are the big picture things. There's also a couple of items when we have the opportunity to pay for a big expense, for example, that's related to the Parks and Recreation. We have an in lieu of parkland fund that we get that's not taxpayer dollars, that is paid for by developers. When they build a big development, they put money into the in lieu of parkland funds, and that money can only be used for parks upgrades and infrastructure upgrades for Parks and Recreation. So wherever possible, we're going to draw on that fund. And again, it's all in an effort to preserve the fund balance so that we'll have access to that, not just for this coming year's budget, for the year after that and the year after that, when we're going to be feeling the impact of this financial devastation. There's a lag time from the financial circumstance until you get your assessment value, as everybody saw when you got your assessed value of your home right now. And it may have gone up, which seems counterintuitive, but the market was really great last July, and that's the number that they're using. So imagine what it's going to be this July, and we won't feel that for a couple of years. So we're doing our best to be conservative in our budgeting. All right. Enough talk about local budgets. Let's go back to that generosity of spirit, and I'll just say I am so grateful to be able to be part of this community and serve this community every day. And the spirit of generosity that we see today with this pandemic is indicative of who we are as a community. And thank you to all of you who contribute so profoundly to making Ossining a wonderful place to live and to serve. Be well.